Hey everyone, in this video, we'll look at how to debug and fix issues in Unity. So this is one of the most important skill to have because if you're a beginner, you'll run into lots of issues, and if you don't know how to diagnose and fix them, you can waste days and weeks on it. And this is the reason why a lot of new developers quit. So in this video, we'll look at different types of errors that you can run into and how you can diagnose and fix each one of them. You'll also learn how to use the debugger tool in Visual Studio. It's a really powerful tool for debugging issues. So let's get started. So I have purposefully made few errors in this project so I can show you how to fix them. So let me show you the error. Alright, so if I start a battle, you can see that we have an error in the console and our game just crashed. Okay, so let's click here and look at the error. So this is a null reference exception. It's a very common error, but it's really easy to fix. So this happens when you try to do something on an object whose value is null. Alright, so we just have to find what object became null and why it happened. So if you click on the error, down here you can see the stack trace of the error, and this will give you the line that is causing the error. So here we have multiple lines, but the line at the top will be the line that is causing the error. So you can go to that line by clicking on this. So let me do that. Alright, so this is the line that is causing the error. So one of the object in this line might be null. Alright, so here we have multiple objects. We have dialog box, player unit, Pokemon. So if any one of these object is null, then we'll get a null reference exception. Okay, so we need to find which one of this object was null. For that, we can use debugging in Visual Studio. So let me show you how to debug. First, we need to add a breakpoint. So if you click in this area, it'll add a breakpoint against the line that you clicked. Okay, and then we need to attach this to Unity. You just have to click this button and it'll be attached to Unity. So now when we test, the execution will pause at this breakpoint. Okay, so let's try testing. So if I run the game and start a battle, you can see that the execution stopped at this breakpoint. So now we can place our mouse on any objects above this line and it will show you the value of that object. Okay, so if I place my mouse on mouse, it will show me the value of mouse. So it's a list with a count of 3. So if we expand it, it will show us the value of each move. Okay, so we have scratch, growl, etc. So similarly, you can place your mouse on any object above this line and you'll be able to see the value of that object. So let's check the value of all the objects in this line and see which one is actually null. Okay, so we already saw that moose is not null. Pokemon is also not null. There is value in it. And then the player unit is also not null. And if you look at dialog box, it's actually null. So this is the thing causing the issue, right? We are trying to call the setMoveNames function on an object that is null. So we found what's causing the issue. So next, let's look why it's null. So let me just stop the debugging and I can control and click on the dialog box to see where it's defined. So it's defined as a serialized field. So it must be assigned from the inspector, right? So let's go to Unity and confirm that it's assigned from the inspector. So if I select the battle system, here you can see the dialog box is not assigned. All right. So if it's not assigned, it'll be null and we'll get the null reference exception when we try to do something on it. Okay. So let's go here and assign the dialog box. So yeah, errors like this are like pretty common. We'll always miss to assign some fields while testing, but if you know how to debug it, then you can find the issue really quickly. Alright, so let's test this to make sure that the issue is gone. So let me start a battle real quick. Okay, so yeah, now we don't have that error, so that's fixed. So these types of errors are called runtime errors since they occur when we run a specific part of our game. So null reference exception is like a common runtime error. So next, let me show you another common runtime error. So if I go to moves and if I press the right arrow to change the selection, so we only have 3 moves here, right? But if I press the right arrow again from the third move, I'll get this error. So let's click on this error to learn more about it. So yeah, this error keeps occurring continuously. So let's click on one of them to see more details. So this is an argument out of range exception. This happens when you try to get an element from an array or a list using an index that is larger than the array size. Okay, so let's say you have an array or list of 5 elements, and if you try to access the element in the 10th index, then it'll throw this exception. Okay, so let's click on this to go to the line that is causing the exception. So this is the line causing the exception. And since we know this exception happens when we use arrays or list, we should check if we have any array or list in this line. Okay, so we do have one. We have a list called moves. So probably this is the one that is causing the issue. So let's confirm it by debugging. Let me add a breakpoint over here and attach this to Unity. And let me just start a battle real quick. Okay, let me just remove the old breakpoint. We use this to debug the null reference error. So let me just remove it. And you have to press continue to continue the execution. Okay, so now if we select fight, you can see that this function is executed and it paused at our breakpoint. Okay, so if we press continue, the execution is still paused at this line. We can try again, but yeah, it still get paused at this line. So this is because this function is called from update, so it'll run multiple times per second. So it's hard to debug things that are called from the update. So what I'll do is I'll remove this breakpoint and continue, and then I'll recreate the issue from here, and after that I'll add the breakpoint and debug. So first let me recreate the issue. If I try to go to the 4th move, we'll get the issue, and now we can add the breakpoint and check what the issue is. Okay, so remember, whenever you are debugging something that is called from the update, recreate the issue first and then add the breakpoint. Alright, so let's check what's happening here. So if I place my mouse on the moves list, you can see that it has a count of 3. There are 3 moves. So next let me check what index are we using. So the index that we are using is 3, but we can't use that, right? If a list has 3 elements, its index will be 0, 1 and 2, right? Index will always start from 0. So we have to make sure to limit this index between 0 and 2. So let's look at the code that is modifying this index. So when we press the right arrow key, we are checking if the current move is less than the count, and then we are incrementing it. So if this is 2, then we'll increment it to 3. So we can easily fix this issue by adding a -1 over here, right? So now if this is 2, then we won't increment it. Okay, so remember, when you get an argument out of range exception, check for arrays or lists in your line, and then check if the index is going out of range. Okay, so let's test the fix. I'll just hit continue. Yeah, we actually have to remove the breakpoint and then hit continue. Otherwise, it'll keep hitting at that breakpoint, right? So now we shouldn't have that error. Let's actually stop and play again. All right. So now if I try to go, okay, we still have that error. Let me check what's happening. All right, we forgot to save our change. So this is not yet saved. So let me press Ctrl S and save it. And let me test it again. Okay. All right. So now if I press right arrow from the last move, we don't have that error anymore because we are clamping the index properly. So we looked at two errors. Both of them were runtime errors. So next, let's look at an example of a compile time error. Compile time errors are the most easiest error to fix. So let's say I want to change the name of my enemy unit object to something else, like 4 unit. By the way, let me just stop debugging. We don't need that anymore. All right, so we change the name of our enemy unit. So now if we go to Unity, we'll have these errors and our scripts won't compile, right? That's why it's called compile time errors. And if you try to run the game, it'll show this message. So these errors are really easy to fix because unlike runtime errors, Visual Studio will show us what is causing the error. Okay, so your scripts will have lots of red lines showing you that there is an error in the code. We don't have to do debugging or anything to find out the error. By the way, if Visual Studio is not highlighting these errors, then that means your IntelliSense is not set up correctly. Usually, IntelliSense will be automatically set up while installing Unity, but if it's not working for you, then I'll put a link in the description showing how to set it up. Okay, so let's go ahead and change the name of our variable back to enemy unit. Okay, and now all the errors should be gone. So now let's look at the third type of errors. So this type of error is where you get an unexpected behavior, but you don't get any errors in the console. Okay, so let me pause the video and create few of these errors, and then I'll get back to you and show you how to fix it. Okay, so I've made few errors. So let me go ahead and show you. All right, let me start a battle. So yeah, here we have a weird error. Actually, we have two errors. So the first one is our enemy Bulbasaur is just a white cube. It's not showing its sprite correctly, right? The second error is the name of our Pokemon is empty. Okay, but if you look at the console, we don't have any errors shown, right? So these types of issues are issues in which you get an unexpected behavior, but you don't get any errors. Okay, so since we don't have any errors, it's a bit more harder to fix this because we don't know the line that is causing this issue, right? So to fix such errors, we have to use the power of debugging. So let me show you what all we can do in debugging. So since this error happened when we start the battle, I'll add a breakpoint at the start of the setup battle function, and then we can debug this function line by line. Okay, so let me go to Unity and play the game and start a battle. All right, so the execution paused at our breakpoint, but unlike before, we don't know if this is the line that is causing the issue. So we should debug this function line by line and find the line that is causing the issue. All right, so to do that, we have few options over here. So these three buttons can be used to control the execution. Okay, so right now the execution is paused, but I can go to the next line I can actually execute the next line by pressing the step over button. Okay, so this is step over, this is step in, and this is step out. So if I select step over, it'll take me to the next line. All right, I can click on it again and it'll take me to the next line. Okay, but what if I wanted to go inside a function instead of going to the next line? So for example, let's say I want to go inside enemy unit.setup instead of going to the next line. For that, we can use step into. Okay, so we can't go back once we execute a line. So we can't execute in the reverse order. We'll have to continue and start the battle again to reach that line. Okay, so let me do that real quick. All right, so this time I want to go inside the setup function. So first I'll click on step over to go to the next line. And from this line, I'll click on step into to go inside the setup function. Okay, so now we can use step over as usual and execute the lines that we want. So the one issue that we had is sprite of our enemy was not shown correctly, right? So we are inside enemy unit.setup, and in here we can check if the sprites have value assigned to them. Okay, so if I place my mouse on the back sprite, you can see it has value, but if I place on the front sprite, you can see that it is null. Okay, so this is the reason why we don't have sprite for our enemy. So by using debugging, we can execute our code line by line and find out what's causing the issue. Okay, by the way, I haven't explained the step out button, right? We use these two, but we haven't used step out. So if we use step out, it'll take you out of the function. All right, so step in will take you inside and step out will take you outside. So by using these three buttons, we can execute our code line by line. So this is really useful in understanding how your code is running, and you can understand what's actually happening when you get an issue. So now we know our enemy Pokemon did not have a sprite. So let's go to Pokemons and check if the Bulbasaur has a front sprite. So yeah, it doesn't have the front sprite. So let me assign it. And now if we test, we shouldn't have that issue. All right, we can just continue and we don't have that issue anymore. So we still have the second issue, which is the name of our Pokemon is blank. So let's try to solve this by using the methods that we learned. So I'll have to stop the game and run again to hit this breakpoint again. Okay. Let me start a battle. All right. So the data of the player Pokemon is set to the HUD from this function, right? It will be set from player HUD.setData. So we can try going inside that function. I'll go to next line, and from this line, I'll press step into to go to that function. Okay, so here you see something weird happen. So this is because when you use step into, it will not just take you inside functions, but it will also take you inside properties. Okay, so player unit.pokemon is a property, and it took us inside that property. Right. So if it takes you inside something that you don't want to go to, you can always step out and then press the step into again. So this time it took us to the setData function as we want. So now let's check the value of Pokemon.name from here. So yeah, you can see it is empty. So that's why we are getting the issue. And by the way, we don't have to always debug line by line. If you have an idea that this function might be the one that is causing the issue, then you can always add a breakpoint over here instead of adding breakpoint at the start. And then when you run this, the execution will stop over here. So you don't have to go line by line. So let me just stop debugging and go to my Pokemon scriptable object to check if the name is null. And yes, the name is null, right? So let me give a name to it. And now everything should work correctly. Okay. So now our Charmander has a name. So that is fixed. So let me show you one more issue of this type. So I see this issue a lot in the comments. So let me just recreate it and show you how I would debug and fix it. So let me change my code and create that issue first, and then I'll get back to you. Alright, so I have created that issue. So let me show you what it is. So when I run the game, my character is not walking when I press the arrow keys. Okay, a lot of people have faced this issue when starting the series. So let's try to debug this. So first, I'll go to my player controller script, since that's the script responsible for moving the player. And then I'll go to the move function. Alright, and I'll check if the move function is called. So let me add a breakpoint here, and if the move function is called, the execution should reach this breakpoint, right? So let me just attach this to Unity and test. Okay, so now when I press the arrow keys, the execution is not hitting this breakpoint. Okay, so now I know that the move function is not called. Alright, so let's check from where we are calling it. We are calling it from here. So maybe this if is not working. So let's add a breakpoint on the if, and let's try moving the character using the arrow keys. Okay, so even now it's not hitting the breakpoint. So maybe this if is not working. So let me add a breakpoint on this if and see if the execution hits it. So it's not even hitting that if. So maybe this if might be the one that is causing the issue. So let me place a breakpoint over here, and as soon as I place it, the execution hits the breakpoint, right? But if we remove it and place a breakpoint over here, the execution won't hit it. All right, it won't hit it even when we press the arrow keys. So there is some problem with this if condition. So let's check what we are doing here. So we are trying to move the player if the player is already moving. Okay, that doesn't make sense, right? We should try to move the player if the player is not already moving, right? So this should be not. And now if we test the game, the execution will hit this breakpoint, and if I press continue, it will also hit this breakpoint. So let me also remove that, and yeah, it's working. It won't hit this breakpoint because we are not pressing the arrow keys yet. So let's go ahead and try that. Okay, so when I pressed the arrow key, it went inside this if also, and now if I press continue again, it'll even go inside our move function. So let me remove all the breakpoints, and the character should move properly right now. So yeah, it's moving properly. Alright, so this is how you debug issues in Unity. So the next time you get an error in your code, try doing this. You might find it difficult at first, but as you practice and fix more and more errors, you'll become really good at it. So keep practicing, and as I said at the start, this is one of the most useful skill to have if you are a beginner. So yeah, I hope you found this video useful. Before you leave, make sure to leave a like on the video and consider subscribing to my channel, and I'll see you in the next video.